The thing that I felt was most important in terms of mining was what's happening in the Ethereum Foundation and the Ethereum community, and this morning, the Ethereum Core Dev meeting. They discussed some issues that are very much going to affect miners. And so I've done an elliptical edit of that meeting so that you can get to the meat and potatoes, the heart of what they said that's going to affect you and me as crypto miners. Now, I did take some creative license and I added some sound effects and I did some transitions and I did some close-ups and things that are going to make it seem like I'm picking on people. I promise you, I am not. If you know me personally, you know that I don't intend any of these people any ill will. I'm going to be live in the comments section, so by all means, ask questions. If you have answers, answer questions. And if you're a member of the Mind Your Biz community, then you already know that I expect you to be the mentor that you wish you had, and I'm going to attempt to do the same. All right. Enjoy, and in case I don't catch you later, you know I love your face, right?
I'm sorry, I'm starting to panic a bit because we are not discussing any items for the next hard fork, and we only have 10 minutes left.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. I believe this is us making the decision to reduce issuance to 2.
Over my dead body is this going to happen? Today is a special meeting about Constantinople specifically. So we're going to go ahead and go through first the potential block reward reduction and how long to delay the difficulty bomb. And then we're going to walk through every Constantinople EIP to get an update on the EIPs themselves, if there's any outstanding issues or questions that need to be solved or updates that need to be merged. And then we'll go through client Constantinople updates if there's any ones that are important. And then we'll go through Constantinople testing to see where we're at there. And then if we have time, we may talk about ProgPow, changing the proof of work algorithm to be ASIC resistant. Not sure if we'll get to that or not. And we're going to try to keep this under an hour because the agenda's pretty light. But if it goes a little over, oh well. So Piper has volunteered to kind of start this going about the potential issuance reduction with some ideas. So Piper, take it away.
All right, here I go sticking my neck out. We've got a reduction to 1, a reduction to 2, and a EIP that proposes to keep reduction the same, but alter the uncle reward mechanism.
I would say that the uncle reward one is not very popular that I found. I think it's because people don't understand it personally. Like, I haven't seen community feedback on it because people don't understand the uncle reward mechanism.
I'd like to actually ask the room that, is there anybody here who has taken the time to truly evaluate it or has seen a legit evaluation of that changed uncle reward mechanism? So I'm going to shift my perspective here a little bit. My original suggestion was that we adopt a hybrid of that one to adjust the uncle reward mechanism as well as issuance reduction down to 2. There seems to be a pretty solid consensus that an issuance reduction is needed. Generally, I'm a fan of moderation, and we can always change this again at some point. So 2 seems like a nice, safe estimation, and there's not going to be like I don't feel like there's a way for us to really narrow in on an exact value here. The uncle reward mechanism was under the assumption that there was a decent amount of kind of strong validity to the changed mechanism, but I think that there's homework still to be done there. So that one gets kind of shifted off to the side. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people's opinions at play here, and there isn't an objective right or wrong, because everybody's got different ideas about monetary policy and what we should be paying miners and all of these things. So on some level here, we just need to take a stab at something in the right direction and go from there.
Yeah. Real quick, I think that EIP 1295, the one that messes with uncle rewards, was an alternative to the one lowering the issuance. So if we do both things, basically that would be the equivalent of lowering the issuance even more to something like 1 ETH. This might affect smaller miners, so I'm a little hesitant to just say that the uncle reward mechanism is something that's been thought out enough. I don't think people would be happy combining the two because it was set up to avoid doing the 2 ETH reduction in the first place.
I was under the assumption that that had been evaluated well. It sounds like it hasn't. My real takeaway was that there is a game mechanic right now that encourages uncles, and I thought that if we had a solid mechanism that was supposed to fix that it would be prudent to adopt it. But if we are not sure about that, then strictly going with an issuance reduction to 2 seems like a very sane and simple change.
I'm going to chime in with some of those things I said last time, in that everything I view in the issuance reduction in the context of proof of work is kind of like incremental compromise to get us to kind of encourage the community, keep things moving sanely until we move to proof of stake. When we move to proof of stake, we're targeting, say, 10% of all Ether staked at in the range of 5% return per year. So you're looking at like 0.5% issuance at that point, or even 1% issuance at that point, which I think the community will be certainly happy. And so again, like this is all just incremental compromise until we get to that end goal. And I think 2, in my opinion, satisfies that an incremental compromise.
Yeah, I would agree with both of you. But regarding the whole uncle issuance thing, as far as I understand it, the change is that we keep the uncle reward, but remove the nephew reward, which means that the guy who included the uncle gets the miner gets a reward, but not the one who included it. Is that correct, or is it the other way around?
That sounds right to me, but I'm not going to bet on it from my memory.
I don't know. It seems a bit unbalanced to reward one of the guys, but not the other.
I think merging them into a hybrid version doesn't make any sense in my eyes, and I think we should go with 2 ETH. So I agree with everyone. Also, because this is like the most moderate proposal we have, it would be nice to have like feedback from someone who initially designed the uncle rewards. For me, it appears that uncle and nephew rewards are not entirely broken, and changing this is like a deep technical disruption or how the Ethereum protocol works, and I would be careful with this.
I just posted a link to Vitalik's comments.
The beginning of his analysis is, quote, "I'm scared of this," and then goes into a brief analysis of why he doesn't think it's a good idea.
Cool. So that sounds like there is sufficient skepticism or just uncertainty about the uncle mechanism. So I think we can drop that off the table unless anybody wants to advocate to keep that on the table.
I think Vitalik's biggest argument in the comments was that there would be risk of large miner centralization, and that also there's better ways to adjust the uncle incentivization in order to convince anyone on the network to not have high uncle rates, including large miners.
He speculates that it might encourage miners to adopt a simpler technique to cut down their uncle rate, which would be just to stop accepting transactions, which is empty blocks, which we don't want to encourage.
And we've seen that before as well, if I recall.
Yeah, right.
It certainly seems like there is a decent amount of consensus around choosing the issuance reduction to 2 here. Does anybody want to advocate for doing something different, or does anyone want to advocate against doing that?
Yeah, I would advocate against going with 2. There's a link to a Reddit comment from Vitalik here that is from a year ago. At the end, he said, "Issuance is a key economic parameter, and I personally don't feel I or the foundation or client developers have the authority to dictate this. Perhaps it's worth some kind of vote." So the only vote we've had so far is the EtherChain carbon vote style coin vote, where people said that, there's a clear preference for going down to 1 Ether. Not that I'm against reducing to 2. I guess it makes me uncomfortable to have a client developer meeting where client developers dictate that 1 is too low, so we'll just dictate 2.
I'm sorry, can I comment on this? So I tried to explain this. I saw a lot of comments on Reddit and on GitHub that say, oh, look, there's a coin vote. It's like a massive coin vote and everyone voted for like 1 ETH. But it's really important to keep in mind that this is like only one part of the Ethereum community that hold ETH. Like let's call them investors because they hold ETH and they are naturally incentivized to vote for having like a very low block reward. But we also have other stakeholders in the community, like for instance miners that are incentivized to like keep the issuance at a stable rate or even increase it, because so that's like totally orthogonal to what this coin vote is actually suggesting. And what we are doing here is not to dictate a new block reward, but we try to find like a compromise somewhere in the middle, and agreeing on 2 ETH per block is like the best thing we can do.
If we look at that coin vote and the results say favoring a reduction to 1, I think we should take that as an expression of will, the will to lower it. But I think we also need to be conservative with the changes and make changes incrementally, and not like dictate something that goes against the will of the community.
Combined with the fact that we're delaying the difficulty bomb, not getting rid of it. So this conversation at some point in the medium future will come up, and we will also at that point have a little more context as to where the proof of stake changes are at. And so a conservative step in the direction that the community wants, and then a re-looking at this in a set timeline makes sense.
I don't like the term dictate there because, I don't know, it has a connotation that doesn't exactly feel fair to what this process is, but maybe I'm just picking at semantics here.
I think that it's basically what Vitalik was saying is there doesn't need to be this cabal of people making a decision, that there shouldn't, because I noticed in your quote from him, the word community wasn't mentioned. So I think that almost implied that it needs to be as close to a consensus from the community as possible, and then we just implement the code. But because there is no mechanism, and CoinVote, in my opinion, isn't a good measure at this point. It's arguable that it was in the past, but I don't know if it's, for this particular issue, a great measurement, in my opinion. I would say that because of all that, the fact that we're trying to implement what the community wants rather than dictate it kind of shows that we don't have a better way of deciding this, that we have to decide this because we're implementing it, and there's no one else able to effectively know how to have a signaling method from the community to make a for sure decision.
So the carbon vote was one type of vote. Then last week there was the call where miners, we took a poll from miners, and most of them seemed to be comfortable with 2, but not with 1. So the decision here to reduce to 2 is sort of a compromise between the extreme preference of the carbon vote to go down to 1 and miners being more comfortable with 2. But I also don't think it's necessary to choose an exact number today, especially the block reward. I don't know. I think there should be another opportunity for the community to vote or signal however they want. I'm not sure there's been enough time. I mean, how many days was that carbon vote even running for?
The carbon vote was running for a month, if I recall.
Carbon vote is also just a really poor signaling mechanism.
That's one signal. Another signal is the troll box, which is kind of resoundingly 1.5 right now. Another signal is the miners, which was, we like where we're at, but 2 is reasonable. So there's a lot of signals.
And the miners also said ProgPow was one of the conditions, not the absolute condition, but they were saying that is more important to them than the issuance reduction. And if there is an issuance reduction, we want a real conversation about ASIC resistant POW algorithms.
Yeah, I guess in summary, I don't feel that the signals are coming across cleanly enough. There's a lot of noise. Just saying that 2 sounds right because it's in between 1 and 3. I'm just not fully comfortable with that.
Do you have some other idea of how we can get a better signal? Because, I mean, what are the chances that we'll have better signals a month from now or 2 months from now? I mean, why postpone a decision that there's no indication that, we will have perfect data later on?
I also want to reiterate the point that Danny made, which was that this is effectively a compromise in what we think is the right direction, with the knowledge that things are going to change as proof of stake comes into play.
Yeah, the reason that we're having to decide it today, Casey, was we previously had discussed the fact that if we want to hit the deadline of before DevCon for launching this hard fork, which at this point is still... I'm still myself skeptical that we're going to be able to do that. We would need to, as quickly as possible, decide every change that's going into the hard fork, so that Dimitri and others can properly create the test cases and edit the test cases and create new ones for changing the block reward. Therefore, it needs to be decided today, because for the last month we've been saying, let's decide it next time, let's decide it next time. So from my perspective, it needs to be decided today. But if enough people want it to be delayed, that's definitely something we can consider. And I agree with you that the signals have not been clean. So that's something to consider, certainly.
Yeah, those are all fair points. I just wish there was a better way to get these signals. I call it glow stick governance. So I don't think we have enough good tools for people to wave their glow sticks around and signal their preferences.
I wish there was a better way. I wish there was a way that we didn't have to have the burden to decide this or have us look like we're dictators, but that's going to be how it is until we find a better way.
Until we move towards a long-term issuance policy related to proof of stake, which will be and should be a huge conversation at that point. But it's the protocol being set up for 5 ETH per block was kind of a short-term vision for proof of work vision, and it's been longer, and we've reduced, and it's been longer, and we're reduced, and we're talking about reducing, and incremental compromise until we get to the vision.
I have no strong opinion on whether we should reduce rewards or whether we shouldn't do that. But if we want to reduce rewards, as for me, it should be definitely 2 ETH. So first CIP with 1 ETH can be removed from the table, as for me. So it looks like we just need to decide on whether we want to reduce rewards or not. And if yes, we are going with 2 ETH reward. That's it.
So there's been one dissenting voice from Casey on choosing 2 as the issuance. I feel like I've heard reasonable support for that as well. Does anybody else want to speak out against 2 or to push for a different option?
Does anyone have so sometimes with rough consensus, from what I've read, a good thing to do is to also state, does anyone have a strong enough opinion that they're like, over my dead body, is this going to happen?
So to clarify my objection, it would be to go with 2 on the condition of a switch to Prog POW. So it's not over my dead body, but it would be conditional on changing to Prog POW.
Can you give some context to that?
Well, if there's not enough time to evaluate Prog POW before delaying the difficulty bomb, then I would argue to leave it at 3 and then delay the bomb and then reduce the block reward at the time that we change to Prog POW.
So the only problem is, what if we don't change to Prog POW?
Yeah, I have the same issue. I'm having trouble understanding a strong reason to force these to be linked together, but I'm happy to hear that justification.
Yeah, I guess it does make sense to link reducing the block reward to delaying the bomb, but there's also a lot of signal from the community that they want to change the proof of work algorithm. So it's hard for me to say, well, we'll listen to the one about reducing the block reward, but we're not going to listen to the one about changing the proof of work algorithm.
Just so that we can jump into that, because we can skip ahead to that while we're discussing this, since it's related. Me and Paul have been looking at Prog POW, or I've been facilitating some discussions between miners and other people who've been working on Ethminer and other tools. So Paul, can you kind of give an overview of what you've seen so far from Prog POW, or what your opinion might be on it, if you can? If you haven't read enough or seen enough or gotten enough opinions about it, you don't have to go into detail, but otherwise, if you can kind of explain if you have a viewpoint on it.
Yeah, one comment to the previous discussion. I think it's hard to decouple the issue reduction and the proof of work change because like both affect miners. That's why they are it. And so I was very skeptical about this 1 week ago, and I'm less now. So like I'm trying to go issue by issue, and definitely it's not feasible to have it. Probably not this year even, because there's a lot of changes required. I mean, it's not only changing the algorithm, but it's also whole mining infrastructure that depends on that, and also the way we're going to switch. My opinion is we cannot considering that to be included in Constantinople in any way.
I saw some slight concern in the fact that potentially some of the changes might be vendor specific and that it might entrench a certain vendor of GPUs. Were you able to investigate that or find any information around that?
Not wanting to be too specific on that, but to independently verify it and have a few of us kind of have that verification before we move forward declaring that there might be vendor-specific issues with it, because so far everybody from the ProgPow team has said there's not.
I don't have definite answer to that yet, but yeah, we're working on this. And one of the things we can do here is just to take the software and benchmark big set of GPUs with that and like compare results. So the expected hash rate decrease is by 2. It should be exactly by 2 because that's how the memory bandwidth requirement is increased. But we don't have the numbers. And in case we more likely considering this change, I think we can start benchmarking different GPU models. I don't want to waste a lot of time on that unless we're not committed to do this change.
We should commit to investigating it to the fullest extent we can and then having a discussion on it. However, that discussion, because of this won't be going into Constantinople for sure, the earliest it would go in is July if we do an 8-month delay. So if we do an 8-month delay, the earliest it would go in is July. So the earliest that we could make a final decision on it would be late October. So that would give us plenty of time to evaluate it between now and then, to start to come to consensus or have votes on that. So I think that's a good sign, and I've made it crystal clear to the miners who are communicating with me that it would be at least June before this is implemented. So they're not going to be caught off guard, at least the ones I've talked to, including the ProgPow team.
Is anyone from the ProgPow team on? I'm still pretty skeptical about its ability to resist ASICs and haven't heard a lot from them since the original proposal.
They were supposed to be on the last call, but something came up, and I purposefully did not want any miners or proponents of the issuance reduction on this call, because that would basically, we did that last week, and I don't think everyone hashed out their arguments, and I don't think it would have been necessary to rehash that. However, ProgPow wasn't brought up in detail, so I see your point that there should be someone in here, but because the decision for ProgPow won't be made until right before or right after Constantinople, I didn't see in my opinion, I didn't see it worth it to bring them on for this particular call, but in hindsight, it probably would have been a good idea.
I don't think that's a big deal. Like, we have time on ProgPow, and we have not a lot of time on Constantinople.
I'd like to add that I kind of agree with Powell that it would be good if we come to rough consensus. If it looks good, are we going to go with ProgPow and explicitly kind of state that? Because it's useless if Powell and Nick and whoever spends a lot of time and does a lot of work, and then we just
So I have problem with what Piper proposed, because usually how it works, like we have this hard fork, and like then for months nobody is actually doing anything towards the next one, and so I don't think like we have time like change anything. We just probably will come back to this discussion like 2 months before the next difficult bump increase necessary.
I know that historically that's been the case. We are currently talking right now a lot about trying to get on a better schedule.
But to investigate that. So
So my difficulty in actually having an opinion on ProgPow is that I am not an expert enough in the topic to have an opinion on it. So frankly, I need somebody who is a trusted expert in this to actually make that call. I'm happy to implement if it's what we choose. I'm not excited about spending dev time on a new proof of work algorithm, but that doesn't mean that I won't get on board if there's consensus that it's the right thing for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I kind of I'm not excited about it as well. I would prefer not to do that personally. If I don't want to actually spend time, but if that's necessary, I'm happy to. And I think one of the problems you mentioned is we actually don't have experts at the moment. So one of the problems we have to solve, we have to find them to actually to get information from them about this proposal, because I think nobody from this let's say core devs team that usually come up to meetings are qualified to investigate that. So I think most of my work and Hudson work
where the ProgPow team claimed it was 100% done. Why don't we invite them to launch a testnet with ProgPow?
Yeah, I've heard they haven't implemented it in Geth. I haven't confirmed that. I haven't heard that from the ProgPow team specifically, but I've seen other people say it's done. They've had a lot of good implementation, and they say that I think that should be, if we talk about it again, they should be on the next call.
Okay, I just quickly want to comment to this. I think they have a lot of code. That's true. I've seen they have code for ETH library, the CPU one. So have code for ETH miner that is mostly for GPUs. But on the other hand, it's just a fork, and it's quite far away from being integrated.
Do we have an evaluation of how harmful ASICs are for current mainnet?
We have ancillary evidence from other blockchains about centralization risk, but that is also up for debate and argument, and so that would be a whole nother discussion.
For me, it should be a main consideration whether do we want to improve proof of work algorithm or not, because if there is not big ASICs now, big miners become more powerful.
Why?
Because this, as I understand, ProgPow, it's make your hardware more efficient. So if you have more hardware, it will be more efficient, even more than now. And if you have more hardware than someone else, so we will become more powerful.
It proposes to change the amount of hashing power per piece of hardware proportionally, so you're still proportionally the same part of the network.
Oh, so there is a linear dependency, right?
I'm sorry, I'm starting to panic a bit because we are not discussing any items for the next hard fork, and we only have 10 minutes left.
There's a decently broad acceptance that 2 has support as a conservative choice. Can we make a decision on that? Does anybody want to throw any new ideas in or cover a different topic or bring something back up regarding reducing issuance and whether we should or should not choose to?
So this also needs to be discussed in the context of the delay and the difficulty bomb. I know a meeting or 2 ago we had said, okay, if we're targeting 8 months hard forks, then we'll do a 12-month difficulty delay or bomb delay. I just need to make sure that we're talking about these 2 things at once because they're coupled in the EIP.
Yep. I'm still on that same page of liking that plan of a 12-month delay and an 8-month fork.
That's what I'm thinking as well.
Speak now or forever hold your peace. I believe this is us making the decision to reduce issuance to 2, to do another hard fork 8 months after Constantinople, and to push the difficulty bomb to 12 months after Constantinople. All right. That sounds like consensus to me, or at least lack of opposition.
Yay.
So those EIPs, does the current 2 reduction EIP have the correct delay in the difficulty bomb?
Afri does it.
No.
Okay,
so
that needs to be updated before final.
Yeah, okay. I can update this and put this on what's the next step? Is it last call?
Consensus EIPs don't currently have last call. It would go from draft to accepted.
So just to clarify, we just resolved to adopt an EIP that hasn't yet been written?
No. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 with a slight change to do the bomb diffusal for 12 months.
Right, but you can't make a slight change to a finalized EIP like Nick just said. You have to start from draft.
Casey, can we not argue semantics here? We can shift a small like that and that EIP without it with the full Like, everybody here knows that isn't a giant change.
I mean, it is a draft at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in draft at the moment.
Yes.
So I agree semantics are not vital for saying today without putting the... So basically, we can't move the EAP to final yet. We'll have to do that between now and the next meeting, but we can say that we are going to move it to final once changes have been made, and I think that's appropriate enough. Casey, do you disagree?
I didn't want to argue semantics. I just wanted to double clarify that what was just adopted hasn't been written yet.
Yep. Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Great. So we've come to a decision on that. Are there any outstanding questions on Skinny Create 2? When I was looking at the thread, it did not look like there were. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Martin.
So there's one thing. There's an error in the Skinny Create 2 test.
Anything else on the EIPs before we... well, actually, we're basically out of time, but we'll go through client updates real quick for those who could stay on.
Can I sum this up real quick? We have 4 EAPs that are going into Constantinople: 145 bitwise shifting, 1014 Skinny Create, 1052 Xcode hash, and 1283 net gas metering without dirty maps. And those are all accepted, and we are all on board with those being the 4 Constantinople EAPs.
And then also once 1, 2, 3, 4 is done. Yep.
Can I speak for a second?
Absolutely, Alex.
So I would like to propose that we put together a working group for ProgPow to look into that, and that those persons can regularly kind of present where they're at and how it feels, how ProgPow seems to behave.
There's potential for grant here if there's some sort of GPU expert that wants to do benchmarking or something like that.
So I'm just going to quickly interrupt here, guys. Now, what is mentioned there by Danny as far as there being grants for GPU testing, I don't know exactly who this needs to be. Yeah, newbie, I apologize. I did kind of throw things off there, didn't I? But guys, let me transition over here to the larger camera, because I'm just going to take a quick pause. I had prepared something to just play, and I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to spend the time on camera right now. I'm truly sorry. Today went crazy, but I knew I needed to talk about this, and I knew that we needed to talk about this, and I knew that we needed to circle back over to this. What is being decided by the Ethereum Core Devs is going to be so important to our future. Roderick, how are you doing? I see you in the comments section. Thank you so much for saying hello. Thank you, everybody who's still here in the comments. I see T-Bone and a bunch of other folks from the Mind Your Biz community. Thanks, guys, for coming over to support our cryptocurrency. Thanks for being subscribed to this channel, too. I know that they're working to really promote this channel and grow the Our Cryptocurrency brand as a source for some unbiased and impartial reviews. Of course, all views expressed are opinions, not advice or whatever. And so I know they're very open to different conflicting views too, which is great. Sprengmeister, I see you in the comments. Brandon Ford, if you're still here, thank you. Steph for saying hello. Troy Bates, as well as CryptoMind Tech. Appreciate you guys being here over on this channel. What Danny said about there being potentially a grant or bounty, essentially for GPU testers of ProgPow on behalf of the Ethereum Foundation, is huge. They might be willing. Captain Awesome, how are you? Good to see you. There might possibly be some great bounties afoot for those of us who want to see ProgPow integrated into Ethereum. Might be a really cool opportunity. So if there's somebody who's watching this live stream right now who knows they've got the chops to do that kind of testing across a variety of GPUs, you might reach out to this group and let them know that you're interested in that. Let's check out the rest of the presentation now, and then we'll just chat a little bit afterwards.
If they would agree to actually do some benchmarks and check out the deep minor implementation of ProgPow and something like that.
Maybe we can continue this in the chat in all core devs.
Yeah, that sounds good. We've agreed that we're going to have a group together for that. We want a meeting in 1 week or 2 weeks.
Alrighty, guys, thanks so much for staying all the way to the end. Obviously, I've got the USub now background behind me, but we can talk about this just a little bit. The Ethereum Foundation is huge, right? And by choosing to participate in GPU mining, many of us have sort of lived and died by what happens, decisions that are made and passed down from the ivory tower of this is great. The shot composition says use Seth now. It's kind of cool. But it's appropriate. But what the Ethereum Foundation decides to do, and the Ethereum Core Devs were very much affected by. So this move to a block reward of 2, as opposed to the current 3, going to affect a lot of people negatively. Without some kind of guarantee that there's going to be a proof of work algorithm change, is going to drive a lot of us away from Ethereum and probably stay on Ethereum Classic. What say you in the comments? Do you think that's legit? Do you think that's going to be the case for you as well? Tell me down in the comments. I think personally, we're going to be looking at all kinds of alts that people are mining on their GPUs. And if you've been a member of the Mine Your Biz community, you know that we're talking about all kinds of other ways to get your GPUs to work as well. All right, guys, that's the show for tonight. If you're new to the community, then by all means, visit us over on the Mine Your Biz community. I'm going to leave a link here in the comments if possible. And so you can join us over there for all kinds of stimulating conversation regarding mining, the universe, and everything. But it's just bit.ly. Oh, I put .com. bit.ly/myb-mineyourbiz. Join us over there for conversation about mining, how to get started, and yeah, we'll take care of you. So, Yankee, good to see you in the comments, and Captain Awesome, Springmeister, really appreciate you being active members of the community. So many of them, newbie as well. So, guys, the Ethereum Foundation. If you're watching this or any of the Ethereum Core Devs, by all means, please do reach out for meaningful polling by the mining community. This is a strong reminder and a plea that miners made your network what it is. Thank you, Meep, as well from the comments. But miners made your network what it is. Miners made your currency what it is. Miners have secured your network since the beginning. And especially GPU miners for Ethereum have gotten you to where you are today. So for you to discuss, for anybody to take a flippant response or give a flippant response with regards to compensating miners, perhaps shows that maybe you don't fully understand how your bread is buttered. All right, guys, this has been the Friday stand-up meeting with Seth Estrada. Thank you, Ethereum Core Devs, for putting in the time to make this event happen. And thank you for strongly considering a change to the proof of work algorithm in conjunction with this new decreased block reward. I know that the mining community would appreciate it. All of my community is based on people who are doing this to try to achieve a livelihood. So, by all means, reach out to us, and we will continue to reach out to you.